Hi, and welcome back to part 3 of A History of Klerksdorp. And in this video, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the early years. On arrival at Elandsheuwel along the Skoonspruit, the voortrekkers settled on the western bank of the Skoonspruit stream, known today as Hendrik Potgieter Street, the street that they built there, the road. One must remember that in the beginning they did not have any bricks or zinc sheets to build houses with, and they had to make use of the material available in the area. And in that case it was clay and stones. So the first houses were made of clay with thatched roofs. However, these must have been sturdy dwellings, because the last remaining one stood for about 100 years and was only demolished in 1941. In the passage between the Ou-dorp koppies, later known as Swanepoel's Neck, a large stone kraal was erected to protect the livestock from lions and other wild animals. And after that, gardens with fruit trees, vegetables, and flowers were laid out in Ou-dorp. Wild animals were abundant in the area at the time, and in the Skoonspruit there were even hippos. Many anecdotes regarding some close encounters are told, and in one such story, a lion was spotted at the cattle kraal one day, and 3 voortrekkers went to shoot it. However, the shot with the old front loader, or voorlaaier as they called it, a rifle, missed. When the lion stormed, 2 of the voortrekkers just fled, and the 3rd dove into the Skoonspruit with the lion jumping on his shoulders. The lion let loose in the water, and when the man came up again, he saw the lion on the one shore and a lioness on the other shore. So which way do you go? So he swims to a point where the lions were waiting, and he called to his friends, who emerged very carefully, and later in the day both lions were shot dead. However, the wounds on the voortrekker's back still swore for months thereafter. Another one is Daniel Jacobs was jumped by a lion or a leopard one day near the Old Town Hills, Ou-dorp koppies as they are called in Afrikaans. But with his big pocket knife, he managed to stab the predator to death. In an extremely harried state, he was later found next to the dead animal and carried home, where he eventually did recover, but got the nickname Dal Dood, because it originally looked like he was dead. Now, Dal Dood loosely translates to Dead Daniel. Since there weren't any stores yet, clothing and other commodities were obviously a problem and hard to come by. But merchants with material occasionally did visit the town. But in general, for men and boys, clothing was made from knitted animal skins. And even until the 1860s, tea, coffee, and sugar was brought with ox wagons from Durban. In December 1850, the residents asked for a further piece of land 35 minutes on horseback in the square east of the town, and the same size on the west, which was granted by the authorities of the time. With the Sand River Convention of 1852, the area north of the Vaal River gained its independence from Britain. Klerksdorp was now part of an independent Boer state, the Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek, the South African Republic at the time. However, it was not a separate district, the town of Klerksdorp, but was known as Ward Squinspruit, which formed part of the district or town of Potchefstroom at the time. Even the church was initially also in Potchefstroom, and the children of some of the early settlers of 1837 were only baptized in Potchefstroom on 27 March 1842, after a congregation had been established there the previous day. Now, even the magistrate was also established in Potchefstroom, and the Klerksdorpers had to travel there for all legal matters. Now, during the first few years, Klerksdorp developed relatively slowly, but in time the speed of progress increased, especially when you can say spectacular development and expansion began with the discovery of gold about 50 years later, after the founding of Klerksdorp. Now, Klerksdorp had been regarded as a town by its inhabitants and visitors long before its official proclamation as a town on 12 September 1888. And the Reverend A. Murray, who had travelled through the Transvaal in 1850, referred to the town as the town on the Squinspruit. So it was already acknowledged as a town. We do not know exactly when the settlement next to the Squinspruit got the name Klerksdorp, when they started referring to it as Klerksdorp. The first written use of this name is found in an inspection report of 1850, when the residents applied for 2 further pieces of land, east and west. In 1853, there was another official mention of the name when the Volksraad minutes, section 63, mentioned a memo of 19 residents of Klerksdorp complaining of a lack of water. And the name Klerksdorp was mentioned there as well. There were also often problems with the native population in the area. So wrote acting magistrate H.S. Straw of Rustenburg in December 1852 to Magistrate Jacob de Klerk, Jr. of Leidenburg, that the sitting of the Volksraad at Rustenburg had been postponed due to the thefts and robberies in Mariko and on the Squinspruit area. Now, Commandant General M.W. Pretorius was therefore obliged to first establish a penalty commando, strafcommando as they called it in Afrikaans. These penalty commandos would find the native tribes who were involved in the thefts and robberies and take back what was stolen, and often take more as part of penalty. During the spoils split at Squinspruit the following year, everyone who suffered damages as a result of the thefts and robberies was compensated. And those wounded during the penalty expedition received an extra compensation. In 1854, there were again rumors of an imminent attack by native tribes. And in a rush, the inhabitants of Klerksdorp erected a primitive hedging for defense. Now, Paul Creer, who later became the state president, rode from Rustenburg to join a commando against the native tribes. However, the native tribes fled towards the present-day Botswana, and no actual fight took place. The same year, the citizens complained to the War Council, Klerksdorp, as it was known in Afrikaans, about the poor provision of black labor by the field cornet H.J. Pretorius. It must be accepted that these were different times, and much of the work that was needed to be done on a farm and farming communities required labor, and the only available labor at the time came from native tribes in the area. The War Council at Pienaar's River grants the field cornet courtesy of trying to convince one of the local native villages, which was called Skilpad, which translates to tortoise in Afrikaans, to come and work for the farmers voluntarily. Also in ecclesiastical territory, there were sometimes bustlings, you can say. In a memo of the Volksraad, Council of the People, H.J. Pretorius and 32 other citizens threatened to dismiss the church council and elders in 1853. On the 21st of October 1856, a meeting was held in Klerksdorp where Commandant General M.W. Pretorius and Assistant Commandant General J.F. Dreyer were present. The meeting clearly stated to them that they did not want to accept the Cape Church Act, but that an own church law had to be drafted for the ZAR, the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic. From the deed of transfer of the magistrate of Potchefstroom, it seems that the first erf in Klerksdorp, the actual property, was officially registered on 14 December 1854. By 1859, there were problems regarding the right of possession of land in Klerksdorp, because the initial plots had just been given by landowners. The residents then acquired property rights over the land on which their houses and orchards and gardens were located, and communal ownership over the pastures by a registration process. In the early days, there hadn't been any kind of registration authority. Another one, Elandskuil. An advertisement by J.H. Venter in the Government Gazette upset the Klerksdorpers in 1859 because he gives notice that he intends to lay out a town on his farm, Elandskuil, on the banks of the Skoonspruit, a little upwards. In a letter to President M.W. Pretorius, there's the same Commandant-General earlier, they requested that he prohibit Venter from doing so, as this will cause their plots to drop in value. And they also pointed out that the law states that there may only be one watercourse from the Skoonspruit into the farm. And if a town is laid out, a number of watercourses would be needed to provide water to the farm or that area. Finally, they emerged with what seemed like a slight threat. And I quote from the original Dutch. I will try to say this. Wij hebben reeds onze belasting betaald en zijn ook genegen weer te betalen, maar indien wij met benodigde water gestremd word en onze plaatsen en erven niets opleveren, sal het bezwaarlik gaan om verder te kunnen betalen. Now, I hope that was fairly correct, but if you translate this into English, it basically says we have already paid our tax. We are willing to continue paying tax, but if we do not receive water we need, and our plots and farms yield nothing, it will be difficult to pay tax any further. So they were temporarily successful because the Executive Council sent a copy of the water regulations, which allow only one watercourse per farm to Venter. In later years, however, Venter's dorp was founded on his farm, Roodepoort. Now, not the same Roodepoort as near Johannesburg, completely different, Roodepoort. Now, the water issue The availability of water from the Skoonspruit to irrigate the fertile soil of the erven, the plots, on the banks was certainly one of the main reasons why the group of original voortrekkers settled here. However, how to divide and control the water consumption from the stream, especially during drought times, was also a problem for many years and often led to dissent. As previously noted, the residents had complained about the water problem to the Volksraad as early as 1853. It was decided to refer the case to the Court of Magistrate and Heemraden. Now, Heemraden is the equivalent of an alderman. However, the documents in this regard got lost, so we do not know what the ruling was. But on 2 October 1857, State Attorney J.H. Versaghi of Potchefstroom wrote that the residents of Klerksdorp requested that the president make regulations for the town of Klerksdorp, as there were many irregularities with the water and other matters. Now, in terms of the regulations for Klerksdorp and Skoonspruit, issued by President N.W. Pretorius in 1859, each property owner was only entitled to one watercourse. The strife over the water was mainly caused in Klerksdorp by the upper four plots having a total of 12 watercourses instead of one each, 4 amongst them. This resulted in no water being available for the lower plots. That's now along the Hendrik Potgieter road or street. The owners of the farm, Elandshevel, were also not always willing to share the Skoonspruit water because they got the first water with the plot dwellers or erf dwellers later, as noticed by a protest letter from A.M. Lagrange to President M.W. Pretorius. Sometimes things became so emotionally charged that violence was feared. Farmers further up along the stream towards Ventersdorp caused further exasperation with the residents of Klerksdorp by sometimes digging more than one watercourse from the stream to their farms. Over the years, the battle over access to water from the Skoonspruit flared up periodically. In 1887, water regulations were again enacted for Skoonspruit, but complaints were still being sent to the government. It was only in 1911, with the commissioning of the municipal water scheme, that everyone was assured of a constant water supply. Now, there you go. That is a basic summary of the early days of the settlement of Klerksdorp. And I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, click the like button, please. And do subscribe, because I hope to bring you a few more of these videos about the history and development of Klerksdorp. Catch you in the next video.